two people find themselves in an interesting house. It has more to offer than just its main level and basement. It stretches far into the ground and harbors an ugly secret that the duo wished they never uncovered. Tess arrives at a house. She tries punching in a code at a lockbox, but it does not work. That makes her check her phone, where she sees the code is slightly different. She now opens it, though nothing is inside. Tess calls the property management and leaves a message. She goes back inside her car and observes a light in the house. She rings the doorbell and soon sees a man through the window. He opens the door and she questions who he is. He does the same to her. He tells her he is renting the place, but she is renting it too. They both booked it from different sites. Tess shows dissatisfaction with the situation, and they do not know what to do. The man recommends that she come inside, and she does. In there, she wants to see his reservation. While he retrieves his phone, she goes to the washroom. She looks through some items in there. When Tess comes out, he surprises her. He shows her his reservation, and she states it looks real. They are confused and don't know what to do about this. Tess decides to find another place, but the man tells her not to do that because the area is not safe. She decides to stay for the moment. As she sits on the couch, he introduces himself as Keith. He offers her an unopened bottle of wine or some tea, but she declines them. She calls other hotels for any vacant rooms, but is told that nothing is available. Keith informs her that there is a convention in town, and she might not get a room due to that. What he proposes is that she stays in the house with him. Tess does not want that. Keith tries changing her mind by being civil about it, saying he will sleep on the couch while she could use the bed. She agrees to it. However, they have to wash the bed sheets. Later, we see the washing machine in operation. Tess sits on the couch, looking at the tea Keith prepared for her. She goes into his room and spots his wallet there. To be safe, she looks through it and takes a picture of his ID. Then she brings the wallet to him. After being in the washroom for some time, she exits and finds Keith sitting at the table with wine glasses ready for two. He tells her it is still unopened and thought they could have a drink. Tess politely declines and tells him to drink instead. She sits with him, and they talk about why they're both in town. She lets him know that she's there for an interview to work for a filmmaker, and he surprises her by having seen the film she mentions. Due to that, their conversation kicks off, and they find themselves connecting on that level. Some time passes, and Tess is now also drinking wine. They talk freely among themselves, and she tells him that if their positions were reversed, she would not have let him inside. Before their bedtime, Keith shows her how to set up the bed sheets. He leaves after he does it, and we see that Tess is delighted with how they spent their time. At night, we see her sleeping. As she does, her door creaks open, but what makes her sit startled in bed is a frightening sound that instantly follows. Through the open doorway, Tess observes Keith acting weirdly in his sleep. She enters the room and hears him making more sounds. We see a door close in the distance, and she comes to him. Touching and moving him, she wakes him up. The man screams and scares her. He follows that by questioning her action, and she explains the situation. After that, she apologizes to him and asks if he opened her door. He says he did not, and so she goes back inside and locks her door this time. In the morning, Tess wakes up and discovers that Keith is not there. She finds a note on the table from him, stating that she should leave the key in the box. She does that and looks around the area they are in. Observing it during daylight, she sees how bad it is and how right Keith was. Then she gets in her car and drives to her interview. While sitting there waiting, she looks at the picture she took of Keith's ID. Shortly after, she gets greeted by her interviewer. Following the interview, Tess tells the lady where she is staying, and she expresses disbelief that Tess chose such an area. The interviewer tells her she should not be there, and also says she will call Tess tomorrow. When she comes back to the house, she notices someone running her way. That prompts her to rush to the lockbox and quickly collect the key. She uses it in time to open the front door and have it separate her from the man. He yells for her to exit the house. Shortly after, she packs her belongings and calls 911. However, the operator tells her that no units are available to go there. At a later time, Tess looks into the basement and enters it to get some toilet paper. While she climbs the stairs, the door closes on her. She tries to open it, but it's locked. She doesn't have her phone with her, and the key is not in the lockbox for Keith to enter the house. She resorts to standing on a bucket to look outside from the ground window. She follows that by searching for whatever she could find down there. In her search, she discovers a hidden rope in the wall and pulls it. Doing so allows her to open the wall like a door. Nothing but darkness resides in there, making her boldly reject the idea of venturing inside. Later, she uses a long mirror to bounce the light from the lamp into that area. It now slightly illuminates it, and she enters with caution. She walks along until she opens a door that reveals a bleak room containing a messy mattress and a camera positioned to record it. A bucket stands on the floor and a faded handprint is on the wall. All of this terrifies Tess, and she leaves the hidden room. She hears knocks at the front door, prompting her to knock on the small window for Keith to see her. He is shocked to find her there and helps her open the window. She gives him the key, and he soon sets her free. Tess panics and tells him they need to leave the house, explaining to him what she found. She compares the room she saw to a dungeon, and Keith wants to look at it. She urges him not to and starts leaving, but he stops her and states he did not see the room. He tells her to wait for him so he can look at it. He does not want to get locked in like her. Tess agrees to it, and the man goes in there. She walks after him, stopping at the doorway and asking him if he found it. After saying that he did, she wants him to return. She stands on the stairs now and calls out again, but he doesn't answer. The door starts closing, and she hurries to prevent it, placing a chair to keep it from shutting. Tess goes into the room again, only to discover that Keith is not there. She uses her phone flashlight to search the dark area now and finds a door next to that room. Opening it reveals another severely dark area, but with descending stairs this time. She yells out to Keith with dread in her voice. He faintly answers when she yells a second time. He wants her to help him. Even though Tess is terrified, she ventures down the stairs. Her flashlight reveals an underground area, like a cave. She soon comes to a metal door and hears Keith's yells. Moving past the door, she finds empty cages. Tess is full of fear and confusion at this point. She walks further and screams for Keith to answer her. Shortly after, he crawls to her, and she asks him why he came down there. He whispers that someone else is there and that he was bitten. Tess urges him to leave the house with her, but he wants to go back because of the person. At that moment, a monstrous individual comes behind him and takes away Keith's life in front of Tess. After that, it roars at her. The next scene has a man driving on the road while singing along to the radio. He is AJ, and he enjoys himself until he gets a call. A lady tells him that he was indecent with a certain girl during their shooting of a pilot. That girl does not want to move forward if AJ is involved. A man on the phone states that he is also likely fired due to what he did. This news shocks and appalls AJ. He rudely talks back to them and asks them if the girl is accusing him of having violated her. They confirm that to be the case. He ends the call and stops at the side of the road to look at the ocean in a devastated state. Later, he talks to an agent who tells AJ that he's running out of money. He wants to sell some of his properties to counter that. At an airport, he sees that he's on the news because of his indecent act. He talks to another person on the phone about wanting to talk to the girl that got him in trouble. He is advised against doing that. When AJ mentions he is in Michigan, the man tells him that he was not supposed to leave the state. He then comes to a receptionist and tells her he's an owner of a property. She gives him the keys to the house that Tess and Keith stayed at. In the next scene, AJ arrives at the property and finds Tess's car parked there. He enters and sees the chair holding the door. After removing it, he notices the belongings occupying the house and gets upset by them. That prompts him to call property management and complain that someone is still staying there. However, AJ gets told that the house was not rented out for a few weeks. He keeps complaining because the maids did not arrive to clean the place. In the washroom, he talks to his mom about the allegations against him. His mother tells him she knows he would not do those things. During their talk, he gets a call and says it's for work, but it's a lie, and he indecently greets his friend. At a bar, AJ discusses the situation with his friend. He tells the friend that he and the girl were intimate, and that at first she declined, but that she eventually let him do it. Following that, AJ returns home and calls the girl he was advised not to call. He leaves a message saying that he's sorry and wants her to call him back so that he could apologize again. What happens next is him rudely looking through Tess's belongings. He finds her laptop and tries to use it, but the password prevents him from doing so. That makes him toss it to the side. AJ goes to check the basement and hears a thud. Trying to scare whoever is down there, he yells that he has a gun. Subsequently, the man gets ready with a knife and flashlight. He enters the basement, locates the rope, and opens the wall with it. AJ enters the area and is amazed. It inspires him to search the internet if underground space can be listed while selling a property. The search tells him it's not possible, but can still be listed as a side note. This information excites AJ, and he starts measuring all the space there. While he does it, he neither gets scared nor does he even question the bleak conditions of the places he measures. He finds the cave and becomes more amazed by the extra space. The clumsy man yells if anyone is there and notices a light coming from a distance. AJ goes in there, seeing a TV playing a program about nursing babies. He watches it in confusion, and something starts shaking his measuring tape. It soon gets taken from him, and AJ's fear makes the man equip himself with the knife. He starts running and drops his flashlight. When he picks it up, the device flickers, and he sees the monster coming at him that ended Keith's life. Running away from it, he falls into a hole, and a cage roof closes on him. Tess is there to tell him to stay silent. The scene shifts drastically to show a man leaving his house and getting into his car. At a store, he shops for baby materials and tells the lady helping him that it will be a home birth. Afterward, he gets back in his car and watches a lady from within it. He soon watches her enter her house and puts on a uniform. The mysterious man knocks on her door and tells her he needs to inspect her house. So he checks her washroom and unlocks the window there. Coming back to his neighborhood, his neighbor tells him he will be selling his house the next day because the town is getting worse. He calls the man Frank and asks him if he will be moving too. Frank replies that he's not leaving. Then he enters his house, and we see that it is AJ's home, but from a much earlier time. Frank goes into the basement, and screams are heard from there. Shifting back to the present time, AJ asks Tess where they are. She tells him to stay calm around her. He questions what she means by that. Shortly after, a baby bottle extends downward for them. Tess informs AJ that they must drink it. After she does, the bottle moves to AJ, who rejects drinking from it out of disgust. Tess tells him that she wants him to be her baby. That is when the cage roof opens, and the monstrous lady jumps in to hug Tess and refers to her as her baby. She comes to AJ, babbles at him, and drags him out. We see her place him in the room with the television. Meanwhile, Tess tries to escape. She gets out and sees the monster lady trying to feed AJ. Accidentally, she steps on the measuring tape, which alerts the monster. Tess runs out back to the basement door. Much to her chagrin, it is locked, so she breaks through the small window, and the man from earlier is there to help take her out. The monster reaches out from the window and does not follow them further. Tess tells the man that someone is still inside the house and needs help. However, he tells her to not go back inside and to consider herself lucky for her escape. Not being bound by the monster anymore, AJ walks along the underground area and finds a bell. He follows its wiring along the wall and locates a door. The monster comes within his eyesight, but for some reason, she starts backing away. At that moment, Tess comes to a gas station and asks the man if he has a phone. AJ enters the room and looks around the mess that is there. A man's cough startles him from behind. He quickly directs a lit lamp in the man's direction, and we see that it is an older Frank. The police arrive and behave rudely with Tess. She explains her situation to them, and what she gets in response is if she has an ID on her. She tells them that she doesn't have any of her possessions with her. Back in the room, Frank gestures to AJ that he wants something, making him guess as to what. So he gives the old man some water. He follows that by telling him that the police will be there soon. Hearing that makes Frank want something else. This time, AJ moves the whole desk to him. Outside the house, the police don't believe what Tess is telling them, and one of them even says she's the one that's causing a mess by attempting to break down the door. They start leaving due to receiving a call from their radio. Tess pleads for them not to leave, but they do. AJ discovers many videotapes and plays the one that is in the VCR. Meanwhile, Tess breaks through a window and enters the house. AJ turns the TV off after witnessing horrific acts created by Frank. He questions what is wrong with him in anger, and Frank takes out a gun from the drawer. Tess gets inside her vehicle and sits inside after having collected her keys. Frank points the gun at himself and ends his life. That is when the monster lady comes out, and Tess crashes the car into the house. She loses consciousness. Afterward, AJ collects the gun and walks out. By accident, he shoots Tess, who returned for him. He comes to her and apologizes. Next, AJ carries her out of the house. Tess sees that the monster is not on top of the vehicle anymore. She tells him where they could go for better safety. As they walk, the homeless man takes them to his area. AJ asks who that monster is, and the man says she was living in that house for about 40 years. She was born there, a monster created by Frank. At that moment, AJ confesses that he might be a bad person, or that he may be someone good who did a bad thing. They wonder if they are safe there, and the man assures them the monster never came to that area in the long time he has lived there. That is when the monster breaks through the wall and destroys the homeless man. AJ and Tess are forced to flee. They climb the stairs of a water tower because there is nowhere else to go. At the top, AJ drops his gun by accident. Then he says he could get away, but Tess would have to slow the monster down. So he grabs her by her head while the monster climbs to them and throws Tess down. This causes the monster to follow Tess in her descent. AJ looks down and sees Tess lying on top of the monster. After that, he comes down and collects the gun. He comes to them and sees Tess is still alive. AJ apologizes to her and lies about why he did what he did. He states that she started to slip and he had no choice. At that point, the monster wakes up and ends AJ's life. She comes to Tess and comforts her like a baby. Meanwhile, Tess collects the gun and the monster points back at the house. Tess tells her that she's not going back there and points the gun at the monstrous lady. After some hesitation, she shoots her.